Please join me in welcoming Michelle Gansle, VP of Global Insights, Analytics for her keynote, The Human Side of AI. Michelle is the Vice President, Global Insights and Analytics at McDonald's and leads McDonald's Global Insights, Analytics, and Data Science org. Michelle and her team connect data and human truth with business strategy to drive growth. Michelle brings outstanding experience to her role, having most recently driven the insights transformation at Mars Wrigley. Here, she pushed the boundaries of MarTech and digital adoption to create a more future-focused organization with the development of a dedicated foresight team. Michelle has 28 years of experience in marketing, market research, and business development for several global Fortune 500 companies, including Dell Computers, Clorox, Nestle, and of course, Mars. A personal fun fact from her bio is that she hopes to get to 100 countries in her lifetime. I hope to get to 20. I invite Michelle up to the stage.
Hi, everyone. Is this on? Y'all can hear me okay? Great. All right, so good news and bad news. The bad news is normally I bring burgers to presentations because that makes you like me more. Bad news, I wasn't allowed to do that, but I did bring cute little lanyards that are back there if anybody wants one. That's the best I could do, so sorry about that. Super excited to be here. So how did I end up here? I was at a different AI conference, and Usama was speaking, and I have to say, not just trying to suck up to him, but truly he was the best presenter of the entire day. So I went over and fangirled to him, and he's like, do you want to be a keynote at this AI conference? And I was like, sure. But what I didn't tell him is that I am not an AI expert. But why did I get invited anyways? It's because I bring the human side of AI to the conversation, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on today. So let me tell you what I mean by that. So at McDonald's, they kind of said it in my bio, but I have an interesting job that's different than most companies. So within my remit is several teams ranging from foresight, consumer and customer and crew insights, which is way on the kind of left side of data and insights. I have business intel and analytics. We also have, though, data science, data governance, and AI, now inclusive of Gen AI. So why would they put all of those together? Most times that's split between two different functions in two different worlds, half in the business, half in technology. The reason for that is because what they were finding is that there was multiple versions of the truth cropping up. There was also, we were being super inefficient in how we gleaned insights. And so an experiment, let's bring it all together and see if not only can we get to one version of the truth, but can we get to better business impact. So that's the goal of my team, and I think it's going pretty well. But also with that, we bring the human side of AI. Normally, and probably you've seen a lot throughout today, when we talk AI, we go straight to things like technology, tools, algorithms, risks. But we forget at the end of all those technology tools and algorithms are humans using those tools and humans creating those tools. And so what I wanted to today is talk about how do we bring the human side of AI to McDonald's. Before that, AI's been around for like 80 years, right? AI was cool, and then it was super not cool, and now it's like really cool again. So what happened? Like, what did ChatGPT do to make it all of a sudden in conversation? I actually didn't know the answer to this question, so I asked an actual AI expert on my team, and this is what I learned. So I don't know, maybe you know this too. But it's the pure speed of computation and parameters and the ability for AI to make decisions. So when ChatGPT 2 came out in 2019, a year later they launched version 3. And in that last year, it grew its parameters by 100 times from like 1 billion to I think it's 17 billion. But between 3 and 4, it grew 1,000 times. It's now at 176 trillion parameters, which is kind of mind-blowing in 3 years, right? It's like a huge, significant difference that's making a game change in how we can use AI to do all the cool things that you've heard about all day today. But the thing is that this is not new, right? We have seen in our own lifetime different ups and downs and ebb and flows and changes of technology. I think earlier, hopefully some of you heard from Steve Johnson. He's fantastic. I met him at dinner yesterday. He was talking about how he worked at AOL back in like the dial-up days, which even though I look young, I'm actually pretty old, and I remember dial-up days. But it was in the 90s that it went from dial-up to broadband. And remember at that time when internet was becoming a thing, we were sitting here having the same conversations. But what about the children and false news? And it's going to be, what's the internet going to do? It's going to destroy all of our minds. But that has not happened, and it's been totally fine. And guess who else knew that? Our friend David Bowie. And I promised you I was going to bring something different. So I have random, unnecessary, but fun videos in my presentation.
I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg. I think the potential of what the internet is going to do to society, both good and bad, is unimaginable. I think we're actually on the cusp of something exhilarating and terrifying.
It's just a tool, though, isn't it?
No, it's not. No. No, it's an alien life form.
What do you think, when you think then about the
Is
future
there life
of it,
on Mars? Yes, it's just landed here.
But it's simply a different delivery system there. You're arguing about something more profound.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking about the actual context, and the state of content is going to be so different to anything that we can really envisage at the moment, where the interplay between the user and the provider will be so in simpatico. It's going to crush our ideas of what mediums are all about.
Okay, so you could take that video and just put in AI or ChatGPT and it would be the same thing, right? That's what's so cool. David Bowie, always blowing my mind. The next fun thing is, we were also randomly talking about this yesterday. One of the things about AI, it's not just about being responsible and ethical, it's also for the humans at the end of it being understandable and relatable. I love this example, partially because it's a QSR example, but partially because I remember this in my lifetime. How many of you use cash when you go to a fast food restaurant? Like zero. Okay, one human being in this entire room. Online, I can't see you, but I'm guessing not many. Okay, so when it first came out, do you think that everybody was super thrilled that they now have the super ultra convenient way to pay? No, most people are like, why would I ever pay for a $3 burger with a credit card? So here's a newsreel.
Cash or credit?
What? The home of the Whopper is offering cash or credit.
I think it's pretty bad if you have to use a credit card when you go to a fast food restaurant for something as little as $3.10.
If I use my GM card, I get a 5% rebate. If I eat here long enough, I'll be able to buy a pickup truck.
Burger King bosses say workers won't have to figure out how much change the customer gets back.
I just hope it doesn't slow things down at the cash and carry, that people are going to be having to call New York and get the confirmation or whatever it is, because when I want a Whopper, I want it now.
Just another way to spend money. I'm sure it'll work for people on vacation when they don't have to do something, but I can't imagine it working on a day-to-day basis here.
So far, the smallest credit has been for $2.50. The largest, just over 10. Jamie Costello, News Channel 2.
The point here, right, is was it understandable? Yes. Was it relatable? No. And so sometimes we're going to do things that aren't both. And why that's important is because we need to be able to understand that we're creating things for humans and that we help to educate and communicate when we're trying to get them to change their behavior. Gartner hype cycle, probably most of you have seen this. Who believes that we are currently in a hype cycle? A lot of people. Yeah, well, here's the problem with hype cycles is that it often has us have erratic behaviors, right? Because we're either overhyping or underhyping. Remember metaverse? That was a thing, right? We all got behind that. I knew that was going to be a hype. This is not a hype. This is transformational. This is here to stay. This is not going away. What will change is, like we've already seen in the last 3 years, not just the parameters, but our ability of what we can do with it, our maturity, how we decide to use it. And I feel like why is this important, of course, as we know, is that because it is going to not go away and it's going to change all aspects of our life, whether that's business, personal, society. The thing is, though, is that we keep talking about productivity gains and the risks, right? All day today, most of it's been about productivity or risks or the technology and tools. But the reality is it's also going to help us be more creative. It's going to also drive crazy innovation like we haven't seen before. But we talk less about that because right now we're still focused on the fear side of AI. And yes, of course, we know companies that use AI will outperform those that don't, doing it responsibly. So I'm going to talk a little bit about AI at McDonald's, because you probably didn't hear me coming to just pontificate about AI, but like, what are we actually doing? I will say, unlike Intuit, we're still at the very beginning of our journey. We are just starting to get we have had AI in the company for several years, but we're still like relatively compared to other companies at the beginning of the journey. So I'm only sharing this to be a case study on how a large company is doing it. I do not claim to say this is necessarily best practice, and totally open to feedback from the audience afterwards. But when AI started blowing up, very quickly we realized we needed to come together as a system and educate people up to the CEO, down to the crew members for two reasons. One is to educate them on what is and isn't AI and what is and isn't Gen AI, and how should we and should we not use it responsibly. But also to reinforce, like, hey, AI's been around a long time and we're doing a bunch of stuff in AI already. Everything from, like, in our global payments, we use machine learning to help us make 50 million decisions a month on whether or not that payment's a fraudulent payment or not, and that's been going on for years. We use things like neural radiance fields, or NERF, in order to help us create 3D images in advertising. We use synthetic data to help us with testing and learning. And then I'll talk a little bit later, but some of you may have already experienced, because it is out there in the world, automated order taking in the drive-thru. Has anyone experienced that? Wendy's has it, we have it, others have it. But it's an interesting example of AI, using AI in a way that actually, affects people in their everyday lives. But I mentioned to you, we focus a lot on the risk side and the productivity side. We're thinking about efficiency, but we're also thinking about this idea of innovation. And my other BFF, Steve Jobs, he also understood this 42 years ago. He was already talking about AI 42 years ago and how AI is going to free people up to do more creative work and to be more innovative. He wasn't talking about risks and how it's going to corrupt people's brains. And here's another fun video.
There was an article in Scientific American in the early 70s which compared the efficiency of locomotion for various species of things on the planet. In other words, they measured how much energy it took for a bird to get from point A to point B compared with the energy it took a fish to get the same distance, and a goat and a person and all sorts of other things. And they ranked them. And it turns out the condor won. Condor was the most efficient, and man came in with a rather unimpressive showing about a third of the way down the list. Somewhat disappointing. But someone there had the insight to test the efficiency of man riding a bicycle. And man riding a bicycle was twice as good as the condor, all the way off the end of the list. And what it really illustrated was man's ability as a tool maker to fashion a tool that can amplify an inherent ability that he has. And that's exactly what we think we're doing. We think we're basically fashioning a 21st century bicycle here, which can amplify an inherent intellectual ability that man has and really take care of a lot of drudgery to free people to do much more creative work.
So just curious, how many of you that are working in this field are thinking about how can we free up our people to do more creative work? I mean, what's often happening, honestly, is they're using it for productivity and then just filling it with more stuff. So I think the name of the game here is, how do we create tools that free up people to do higher level, more meaningful, more impactful work that creates both meaning for them and for the companies they work and for the communities they serve? And so for us, the name of the game is putting humans at the center of all of our capabilities, and how do we do that? So like I said, we immediately pulled together a cross-functional team in order to attack this problem. And rather than it just sitting in technology, we have a multidisciplinary team that involves foresight and insights, but we also have technology, data science, like you'd expect, and also people from HR and legal and comms. And the reason for that is because we need to be thinking not only about the what, but also the how and, of course, the why. So the way that we do that is we have a two-in-a-box team. We have the business side and we have the tech side. And in the business side, most of our focus, that's why we have HR and comms, for example, is to think about what's the education that needs to happen. How do we think about change management? How do we help people understand the risks involved to the customers, to the crew, to our brand, but also the opportunities of embracing. And then on the other side, we are also thinking about what are the right partners, what are the right tools that we can either buy, and what are the ones we need to build to have proprietary innovation. And so that team together is responsible for all aspects of that, and we march together between business and technology. And all of that rolls up into a steering committee that is also multidisciplinary, that has our chief customer officer, who's my boss, our chief financial officer, our chief technology officer, and then our president for global business services. So all of them together, it's not just one person making ultimate decisions, it's also a community of our most senior leaders helping to drive decisions around data AI. And then the approach of how we're doing it is we are a very large company. People like to put us in the news, so we do want to take some amount of judiciousness. So my favorite framework, we use crawl, walk, run. The idea is, like, has any of you ever done a couch to 5K or like a marathon? Raise your hand if you've done one of those. Like, you didn't just like get up and run 20 miles one day or 5 miles. You had to work towards it. So similarly, we can't just expect that we're going to be, into it and create the next Gen OS if we don't practice a little bit on safer things. So in the beginning, we focused on very low and no risk use cases that are internal only, like, for example, our internal website. And then we are moving to more higher value use cases, and then also now working on more transformative use cases. And it's just some easy examples of that crawl, walk, run. I mentioned our internal website. You think that we would be better at this, but you go to your internal website and you search for something and nothing useful ever comes up, and that's annoying, and then people stop using it. So imagine if AI could actually turn up what you wanted it to. Easy use case. Similarly with the crew and the restaurant team, just in the US alone, we have 14,000 stores and 44,000 employees just in the restaurants. And so often they have a turnover of 3 months. So how do we find easy ways for them to self-train that's not reliant on people, that they can find what they're looking for when they're in the store or when they're training? And then lastly, of course, customer, we hold that most precious because we definitely don't want to damage relationship with our customers or our restaurant team members. And so everything around customer service chatbots or doing things automated that could possibly hurt the customer, hurt our brand, we putting that at the very end and being the most risk averse with that. And so I mentioned an example, the automated drive-through, which is in a customer example, but in some ways a safe customer example, because we still have drive-through, on the loop members where if something goes wrong, they jump in. What is interesting about that is that a lot of times, even nothing's going wrong, they still jump in because there's the fear that something is going to go wrong. And so, one of the things we have to train ourselves is how do we learn to trust the systems. But here's an example of somebody on my team going through.
Hi, will you be using a code today?
No.
What can I get for you?
How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. What would you like to order?
I need just 1 second. Hold on. What do you want?
Sure, just speak up when you're ready.
Oh, can I have the 10-piece chicken McNugget meal?
I will have a 10-piece nugget meal.
Was that with tangy barbecue sauce?
Oh, can I have sweet and sour?
Actually, can I have ketchup sauce? Or actually, never mind. Can I have sweet and sour sauce?
Was that with Coke?
Coke Zero.
Coke Zero, please.
Sorry, we currently don't serve Coke Zero here. But we do have Coke and Diet Coke.
Oh. Can I have Diet Coke?
Diet Coke?
What's your code?
No code.
No code.
Anything else?
Yes, can I also have a QPC meal? No onions?
Was that with Coke?
I will have it with an iced tea.
Sweet or unsweetened?
Unsweetened with 2 Splenda packets.
What else can I get for you?
And you want, actually, on that quarter pounder, can I actually have that with onions?
Anything else?
That's it.
Does everything look correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you know what's crazy about that is he was like trying to trip her up, using acronyms, changing his mind, adding things to it. Not only was she nonplussed, and she was very patient, but she was even upselling them, which is pretty cool, right? Like when real humans don't always have the energy for that, or don't feel like that, or get annoyed by the people in the drive-thru. So it's a great example of it's positive in both ways. I mean, how many times have you been in a drive-thru and been frustrated because the person is impatient with you or they don't understand you? So in this case, even with all the complications, she always understood him. She was really patient with him. She kept upselling him. So I think a good example of it working well for us and for the customers. That was a whirlwind tour. I'm going to just leave you with, because we're obsessed with Ray Kroc at McDonald's, he's our founder, we love to quote Ray Kroc. I mean, all the time, everywhere, people are quoting Ray Kroc. So I found this one for this thing that if you work for money, you'll never make it. But if you love what you're doing and you always put the customer first, your success will be yours. And that is the end.
We'll now open up for questions. I have one individual over here.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. As I'm seeing that video, I'm wondering about technology that recognizes people that use sign language or that use Braille for communication. Isn't it taken for granted that everyone can communicate verbally? I don't know.
Yeah, great question. And we are working on that and looking at that. So even the drive-through we'd still consider it in like POC or beta because right now it can only do English. We still want it to learn other languages, and also like with our app, for example, we're building in tools for blind and deaf people also to be able to use our app. So certainly important to us and working on it. And as you can imagine, more complicated. So it's got to roll out in layers, but definitely on the roadmap.
We do have a follow-up question from one of our virtual attendees. We are receiving a lot of follow-up questions about synthetic respondents, and we know you spoke about this earlier. So Shari was asking, could you share a bit more about your perspective on synthetic respondents and how you're approaching it?
Do you mean like synthetic response in terms of fraudulent behavior online?
I believe that's the context that she may have seen it on your slides, yes.
Okay, yeah, so when I was talking about synthetic data before, I was purely talking about internally when we want to experiment or test and learn models or tools. We'll use not real data so that we're not using real customer data, so we're not using, breaking any privacy rules or putting any of our data in danger of getting out there into the world. So we create, like digital twinning lookalikes to be able to do that. I hope that, I'm not sure if that's answering the question or not, but that's my answer.
Thanks, Michelle. In listening to the automated order taker, she did the right things. But to me, it felt a bit slow and frustrating. And then the need to read and verify stuff on a screen, it seemed a bit intimidating. I don't know. How do you measure customer satisfaction with this? How do you say, hey, I prefer this to a human, or I actually prefer a human who repeats stuff to me and can respond much faster?
Yeah, great question.
And
that was
a follow-up question would be the size of have you used large language models there, and kind of what size model and which way did you go?
Salman, you're supposed to be asking me easy questions, making me look good. First, part A of that question. So, that was an extreme example. He was also talking very slowly, and they were purposely trying to be a pain, and just to show like how far it can go. But I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that we did research afterwards, and actually customer satisfaction increases because they feel more confident. Because even with the seeing it at the end, actually whether that's a human or an AI, most customers prefer that because they're never totally sure, did you actually get my order right? So in fact, it's a reassurance, like, okay, they understood, especially when they're like, I want this, not this, don't have that. So in fact, that's nothing to do with AI, that's just helpful so that people know that they were understood. Part B was something around what models do we use. Boy, that's going to be a tough one. We actually use several types of learning language models as well as other software and human guardrails and interventions to be able to produce that. We partnered with IBM and multiple other companies in concert with IBM in order to create that, and now we have since brought it in-house, and our own team manages that.
We are unable to take additional questions at this time, but we will take your questions later at the cocktail hour. Michelle will be there. And for those online, we do have your questions. So thank you, Michelle.